Oh my gosh, I almost got swarmed coming in. Wow, that was close. I have a question for you. How many kilometers do you think worker bees fly to produce a pound of honey? Danae?
60,000.
Georgia?
100,000.
Okay, Georgia was closer. 88,513 kilometers. You can get this when I'm done. Takes a while to get off. Hi, my name is Logan Clarke, and welcome to my Masterworks. I hope to educate and enlighten you about how we can save the world by saving the bees. Did you know that one little organism can have a drastic impact on our society, economy, and ecosystems? Have you ever just looked at a bee and said, oh, it's just a bee, while failing to realize how much it provides for the economy? The dollar value of plants pollinated in 1 year is $265 billion. If bees were to go extinct, a process which is happening, plants would lose their colors and humans would follow 4 to 6 years later. In this presentation, I will be talking to you about different types of honeybees and their roles in the hive, communication, pollination, and the decline of honeybees in the world and how we can help. In an average honeybee colony, there are 3 different kinds of honeybees: worker bees, drone bees, and queen bees, that have their own roles to fulfill and support the functioning of the hive to make sure that ecosystems are balanced and that the hive grows and thrives. Worker bees are all females and live up for 6 weeks. They gather the nectar and pollen from dawn till dusk and can visit flowers up to 5 miles away and make up to 10 foraging trips a day. You can see right there, she has pollen stuck to her hind leg, and the reason why is she has duck's hairs, and it's called her pollen basket. Drone bees are all males and live up for 8 weeks. There are only 200 drones in an average colony of 30,000 bees, and have a 1 in 1,000 chance of mating with a queen bee. However, when they do, it really does not end so well for them. Their genitals rip apart and they bleed to death. Here is a photo of the drone bee, and you can see how much bigger he is from the worker bees around him. What big eyes you have, Mr. Drone Bee. Yes, all the better for spying on the queen. Queen bees is the mother of the colony, and she runs the show. She lives for 2 to 3 years. She only leaves the hive once to mate up with 20 to 40 drones, allowing her to lay 2,000 eggs for the rest of her life. You can see here how much bigger she is from the worker and the drone bee. Let me introduce you to how bees communicate in the hive. They communicate in a very complex way called the waggle dance. The worker bees dance to the other workers to direct them to the best sources of nectar and pollen. The angle of her body points in the direction of the best flowers that have the most pollen and nectar. Here's a short clip of what it looks like. Look at the one with the green dot. Pollination is the process that enables plants and flowers to reproduce through the production of seeds. It happens when pollen grains are transferred by insects, birds, or wind from the male part of the flower, known as the stigma, to the female part of the flower, known as the anther. Bees and flowers and plants have grown over time to always want to be with one another. They have a mutually dependent relationship. Plants attract worker bees by producing nectar, a sweet carbohydrate which the bees love, collect, and make into food to feed for the worker bees and the drone bees in the hive. At the same time, the worker bees also collect pollen, which is a protein, to feed to the queen and bee and the larva. Did you know that pollination happens blindly? What I mean by blindly is honey worker bees collect the pollen seeds from the male part of one flower, and then they travel to the next flower in search of pollen and nectar, and inadvertently transfer some of the pollen that they've collected onto the female part of the flower. This will pollinate the flower and lead to the production of seeds. Like I said before, worker bees have dense hair on their hind legs and where the pollen sticks to their fur, and it's known as their pollen basket. And see how much pollen he's collected off of a dandelion. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the honeybee went extinct? According to Albert Einstein and modern scientists say, humans would become extinct 4 to 6 years later. Wow, isn't that crazy? So why is the honeybee declining in large numbers, and how can we help? Since 2006, we have become aware of a phenomenon called colony collapse disorder, which has affected many bees in many different countries. There appear to be many things that contribute to the decline, primarily greater prevalences of mites, neonicotinoids, which are chemicals, climate change, and deforestation, all of which are extremely serious. Neonicotinoids are chemicals pesticides sprayed on plants which affect the bee's nervous system. In the US alone, bees declined from 5 million hives in 1998 to 2.5 million hives in 2015. In 2020, it's predicted that the numbers will still be around 2015 levels. Despite more awareness, we have to do more. Parasitic mites are playing a bigger and bigger role in the decline of honeybees. The main mites that invade honeybee colonies, are called Varroa Mites, which are specialists at getting into these hives and reproducing. Once in, they quickly infest the whole hive. When the queen bee comes around and lays her eggs in the capsules, the eggs get contaminated with baby mites, which act like parasites and live off the larva. When the worker bees then cap the capsules, the larvae become trapped with the Varroa Mites. As the larvae grow into young bees, the Varroa Mites reproduce and grow with the bee and slowly suck the blood and fat out of the bee and can even eat on their internal organs. When bees are ready to come out of their capsule, they have only enough energy to chew through the cap material and are not strong enough to carry out their roles in the hive. Once the bee is out the cell, it spreads more and more Varroa Mites throughout the colony, and the whole thing spreads, and more bees become infected, which weakens the hive further and further. The mites also harbor other viruses, such as Varrosis, and ultimately the colony becomes too weak and ill to survive and collapses. Neonicotinoids are highly toxic, and even small doses can negatively affect the bees' navigational systems. The bees become unable to find their hives, get lost, and die far away from their colony. If significant numbers of bees disappear from a hive, the rest of the colony's population will decrease to the point where they won't even have enough bees to maintain the colony, and they will all die out. The most frustrating thing is that there are other less harmful new pesticides, which have been approved with much lower toxicity to bees. They are much better for the bees and the environment and are as effective for plants, but the governments keep on delaying the dates for them to replace neonicotinoids because it's an industry in the USA controlled by big companies which make billions of dollars each year from their existing products. Deforestation is reducing the bees' habitat and destroying an equivalent of 8 football fields of forest every minute. Bees are dedicated to their own particular ecosystem ranges, so they can't just fly away and go elsewhere. Deforestation is killing the bees. Scientists say that climate change is interrupting the bees' nesting time periods. It is affecting the time periods that flowers are in bloom. For example, apple trees are moving to a new flowering schedule, and it's different from what bees are used to. Consequently, the bees struggle to pollinate them because there is not enough time for them to do so. This means that bees will be nesting when fruit trees need to be pollinated the most. Unbelievably, we have lost 97% of traditional wildflower meadows in the world, thus giving the bees less habitat to pollinate. An extensive study took place from 1901 to 1974, where they followed 67 bumblebee species and charted their daily lives. During this period, these bees were found to be fine and thriving. Other scientists kept this experiment running into the 21st century, but sadly the charts began to show that bee populations were succumbing to negative effects of deforestation, resulting in loss of their traditional habitats. I have some really exciting news though. This is called a blue bee, and it was thought to have gone extinct in 2016 in Florida. The exciting news is it was rediscovered again in Florida in March 2020. Interestingly, it has evolved over the time that it was thought to have been extinct, and now has a long piece of brown hair from its chin and down, and scientists think that they use it for pollination. These bees are super rare, and there's thought to only be 17 of them left. Let's hope that they continue to adapt and thrive. When the grade 9s graduated last year, they all contributed towards acquiring a colony of honeybees for IPS. And this is when I started thinking more and more about bees. And the colony at IPS was super cool, and man, was it thriving. I loved pulling back the gray covers and looking at them. There were more than 30,000 of them piled right next to each other. I remember clearly when I opened the hive and I first saw the queen for the first time. What an amazing addition it was to IPS's community. In October, the hive was doing really well. The queen bee seemed to be healthy, and there were also many workers leaving in search of nectar and pollen. I started a weekly process journal of the bees in September, and in December, unfortunately, things started to take a turn for the worse. In November, I remember a grade 6 student found something like a mite in the hive, and Pam grabbed her magnifying glass to take a closer look at it. On that day, I wrote an entry in my process journal, which in hindsight was like a prediction of what was to play out. And now looking back on it is now crazy what I wrote. I said, "They seemed kind of mellow and sick, and they were moving super slowly." Yes, at the time, it may not have seemed like that much, but soon after this, the fall of the colony started to play out. The honeybee colony at IPS was being affected by Varroa mites. The infection that they got was a bit different because the mites actually passed on a virus such as Varroa, which killed the bees rather than the mites living off them as parasites. Nonetheless, our whole colony became badly infected and very ill as the mites multiplied and took over the colony. It was very sad to see firsthand how bee colonies are becoming more and more susceptible to mites as their overall populations continue to weaken, and with everything that they are now facing in the world. The brown text right there is bee diarrhea, which is also covering all the school windows as well, and it was an indication to how sick the colony was. When we got back to school on January 8th, 2020, we saw that there were numbers down to 100 bees left from a colony that was once 30,000 bees. Over the first few weeks in February, we started seeing numbers down to 20, then to 10, and then on February 7, 2020, there were only 5 bees left. We also had no idea where the queen bee had gone. I thought she was dead until Amanda and I found her on February 11, 2020, at the bottom of the hive where she was with 2 other bees. Although she was alive in the morning, February 12, 2020 marks a very sad day. Although she was alive in the morning, 2 hours later she was dead, and a couple of days later the colony was gone. As you can see, Varroa mites are terrible for getting into honeybee colonies.
Point it at the computer. You say arrow on the computer. Or just use the arrow. Use my mouse.
Sorry.
Have a sip of water.
What most of you probably don't know is on March 16th, 2020, I went over to IPS to help install the new honeybee colony. It was an awesome day, and I have a video right after this showing you the process of the installation. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. On the positive side, here's how we can help and save the planet. Since bees are declining quickly, we as humans need to start helping them more and more so we can still have the colorful flowers, healthy crops, and breathe the fresh air and not have to worry about survival as a species. One, we need to start creating honeybee-friendly habitats in our yards. Having a bee garden or a bee lawn, even in small planters, is very valuable, especially in urban environments. Designating a little bee space in your yard will really help bees collect the nectar and pollen that they need to make into food and increase their chances of survival over the winter months. As stated by a researcher at Ohio State Department of Horticulture, crops, we need to be planting flowers that produce the most nectar and pollen for bee survival. Flowers such as lavender, crocus, sunflower, butterfly weed, popeyes are all bee attractive flowers. These flowers produce enough nectar and pollen for honeybees and other bees to use year-round. 2, we need to stop eating foods that are sprayed by pesticides. Bees all over the world are dying from pollinating pesticide-sprayed plants. Organic crops are not sprayed with pesticides, making these foods a better alternative for us to consume to help the decline of bees. 3, we need to think just beyond what we eat and include avoiding the use of insecticides in our gardens. Always check the label before you purchase anything you spray in your garden to make sure that it's not toxic to bees. Although it's also worth considering the use of herbicides because although they aren't highly toxic to the bees, they kill wildflowers that are good for bees to collect and to turn into pollen and nectar to feed them. 4, many people are scared and frightened of bees, and this can result in bees being killed unnecessarily. If you show a bee that you're scared by swatting it around, it sends a message of danger to that bee, which can force them to sting you in defense, and sadly, bees die after they've stung anything. Please don't kill bees, just walk away. 5, we need to preserve and protect and expand the remaining 3% of wildflower meadows that are left in the world and stop urbanizing all that land. If you know of an extra piece of land in your community, perhaps you could ask to have that space used to create a plant a bee-friendly habitat. Please don't get rid of dandelions because although they are weeds, they're actually really good sources of pollen and nectar for bees. 6, please buy local honey that's produced by beekeepers. You could also try to reduce your honey consumption because it takes 12 bees' lives to produce a teaspoon of honey, which the bees could be using for their own sake. After all, they need 60 to 80 pounds of honey to survive a winter. To conclude, we owe it to the bees, the planet, and indeed ourselves to start making changes as quickly as possible. Our time is running out, but by doing some of these small steps now, we can help save the bees and the environment and improve our chances of avoiding extinction. The good news is scientists have been working towards developing a honeybee that is immune to Varroa mites, which would go a long way to protect bee colonies. But we need to change our behavior as a species and stop using harmful pesticides, stop destroying bee habitats, and start creating more designated spots for bees in the world. Scientists are also in the process of trying to invent a robotic bee to see if it could do the job as well as a real one. But again, time is running out. We are pouring so much of our efforts into so many different things, focused on ensuring our longevity and our survival. But I think that we should really just focus on our efforts on saving these keystone figures in the wild and ensuring that nature continues to work as it does in its amazing, unique way. I hope that after this Masterworks presentation, you have a better understanding of honeybees in general and how amazing they are and just how critical they are for the survival of the planet. I'd like to thank some people that have really helped me in my Masterworks journey. First, I would like to thank my faculty advisor, Amanda Zabo. Thank you, Amanda, for helping me and guiding me throughout the course of the year. I would also like to thank my external advisor, Magali Shamali, for dedicating so much of her time to help me with this own project, and also for all the time that she puts towards to helping the honeybees. And thanks to my family for being there to help and encourage me. Also, huge thanks to Jen Henriksen for taking time out of her weekend and weeks to always be there with us and for reading all of these papers. Also, thanks to Angela Wick for loaning me her bee suit. Also, thanks to my class, and finally, thanks to you for watching this Masterworks presentation.
So well done, Mr. Clarke. I am so impressed. And we are going to turn it over to questions now because I think that your presentation probably generated a lot of them.
My first question for you is about your observation journal. You mentioned that. Can you just tell us a little bit about what that is and what you did on here?
So here's my process journal, and I looked at the bee colony each week and wrote down some stuff. And the questions were, do I see the queen, yes or no? And usually I'd circle no because she'd be hiding under all those bees. Then I'd say, if yes, what was her activity level, etc., calm, and maybe laying eggs, not too much resting. And then I'd usually answer like, is she good if I saw her? Like, is she in the middle of the hive? Is she with all the other bees? Is she laying eggs? And yeah. And if no, what are signs of the queen's health? Eggs, larva, capped cells, use eyes and hands for heat. So if you don't know, on the glass, if you put your hand in the middle of the hive, it's usually warm. So I was checking for that signs, and it was really hot in the middle, and I knew she was healthy at that time. And then, what is the general calmness of the hive? And whenever I open up those gray covers, they all look at me and they're all squirming around, and they always seem super excited. So I usually write really happy, excited, and then 5 was weather. How does this affect the bees' activity of the hive? And I was checking for signs. Are they leaving? Are the drones helping heat the hive? And more signs like that. And that's what I did all the way till February, until things started to kind of take a turn for the worse.
Great, so that you have a very interesting record of the decline of the hive. Yes.
Thanks.
My second question is, you mentioned a lot of things that we can do to help save the bees. What are you personally going to do?
I think I want to plant lavender in our garden, just because it's a bee attractive flower, and just really help with that, and maybe even one day get a colony of my own.
Okay, we're going to turn questions over to Magali, the external advisor. Okay, so thank you, Logan. That was a great presentation. I think we will all remember that entrance. It was great. Okay, so I have 2 questions for you. My first one is natural selection, as described by Charles Darwin, selects for traits that gives an advantage to a species in terms of reproduction or survival. A wasp, when a wasp stings you, she doesn't die. When a bee stings you, she dies. What do you think could be the advantage of such a mechanism?
Well, I think that workers, since they live for such a short time, only 6 weeks, they kind of are like told, well, not told, but they have a message of like helping their colony and helping them and stuff. So I think that they would sacrifice their lives to save their colony.
Okay, yes. And then, so that's what I think too, that's the first part. Can you just think about like a colony as a whole? If like a colony is highly organized, is structured very organized, and what if you want to be done? When you had it on your presentation, right? When a bee stings you, she leaves. I say she because the workers' bees are female, so she will leave in your skin part of her abdomen, right?
Yeah, her stings.
So what do you think that can do in order to help the colony?
Well,
I'm just saying, like, why would she leave that part in the body of the predator that she just stings?
I I'd say maybe to like help save her colony and like her sisters.
Yeah, yes,
No.
that's true.
Yeah.
So it helps give a message to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
To help them.
Yeah, to help
That's,
them.
okay, correct. So my second question is, the queen bee, you said it, she runs the show, and there's a big focus on her. And what do you think about the analogy when we call her the queen bee? What do you think about this analogy with what we call a queen in the human society?
I don't think she should be called a queen. Personally, I think she should be called a prime minister because it's her like birthright. When she comes out, she has to fight other potential queens, and the strongest one wins the throne. So I'd say she should be called a prime minister.
Any more questions, advisors? Oh, good? No? Okay. So we're going to go to questions from the floor, and we have lots. Can you please stand up and speak loudly? So Danae, go first.
Great presentation, Mr. Clarke. I was wondering, for the Lord, could you describe like, the steps that you went through when you were putting the new bees into our hive, I guess?
Okay, so when I went over there, there's this like box, probably like this big, this wide, full of like 15,000 honeybees in it, and I was taking it around and taking some photos. But we had to take like the glass off of the hive and take out some of the frames and install a couple new pieces of honeycomb. And then we kind of like put it together again, and we went outside with the box, and we had to like get a tool to open up the box, but only take the queen out because she's in like her own little square box with like 2 to 3 other worker bees in there. And then we take her inside, and what I did was I got to mark her with the blue dot, and then after that we put her in the colony first so she can just have a sense of a feeling of how her life's going to look like and stuff. And then we grabbed the rest of the colony and kind of like put it on the top of the hive, and then we kind of put tape around to kind of hold it in place, and then let them pour into the hive. So yeah, that's what we did. And then after about 2 days, they were all in there, and then Megley, I think, came back and took the box out and sealed it up. So yeah.
Leland, go ahead.
So you mentioned how bad like the mites are.
Yeah.
For the bees. I was just wondering if there's anything you can do to help protect the bees.
Not really sure on that one, but what we did is we put like cords of wire up on the hive, made it hot for them, because when there's less bees, they're a lot colder, you know, because they don't have 30,000 other bees right next to them. So we kind of put a heat trace along the glass to try and help them.
Can I ask you, Mr. Clarke, what the temperature inside a beehive is?
I don't know.
35 degrees.
It's very warm. And that's going to be just by the wings of the bees keeping it warm. So, Ms. Willis, can you ask your question?
Very well done, Mr. Clarke. I was just wondering, there are like man-made beehives and there are natural beehives in nature. Do you think there's like a difference? Is one better for bees?
Well, I always agree with like things in the wild because I don't really like it when people take animals and put them somewhere together. So I prefer wild honey and stuff. I just think that's a lot more cool, and they get their honey. They don't get people taking away their honey from them. So yeah.
Okay, Mr. Hagelin, your question.
Very well done, Mr. Clarke. Is it possible for there to become too many bees in the hive, and if so, what happens?
Like kind of get overpopulated, and then the queen bee can either decide to swarm and go somewhere else, so they could all like leave the hive, and they usually leave in this big like pile, and apparently you can actually grab them and put them back in the hive, but yeah, that's usually what happens.
Mr. Stringfellow.
So I remember a couple days ago you were holding a drone bee, and you said that
So the two on the front is used, I think, for spying the queen because they're really big. And then the three on the top, I'm not 100% what they're used for, probably just seeing things as well.
Good job. You mentioned that some people are trying to make a robotic bee. Do you think that could work as well as a normal bee, and what role would that robotic bee do?
So it would probably replace honeybees that we have at the moment. And what else, sorry?
So would it work, do you think it could work as well as a normal bee, and which role would it do?
I feel like it probably could work as well as the normal bee, but I would rather have normal bees working together to work and pollinate the flowers and stuff. So I feel, yes, time is running out, so I think we should really just focus on saving the bees at the moment and not have robotic bees to replace them.
Ms. Matthews, go ahead.
Mr. Clarke, that was fantastic. Thank you for teaching me so much about the bees. And of course, I probably have 50 questions, but I'll keep it down. I saw a video or read an article about somewhere in the world where they're hiring people now to actually bring little dusters and go into the orchards and actually dust, like instead of the robot bee, to dust from flower to flower. And I thought, man, is that what humanity has come to, that we need to hire humans to pollinate our trees? And it felt pretty hopeless to me. And you've been so passionate today. Do you have hope for the bees?
Yes, I do. I think if we start working together as a team, I hope that we could save the bees from extinction, because it's going to affect us. And I think we really need a help. Because most people just look at a bee and say, oh, it's just a bee, it's just flying around doing its job. But not that many people actually realize how much it provides for us as humans. So I think, yes, I think we should really start in the next 1 to 10 years, start working together and saving the bees by planting things, stop eating foods that are sprayed by pesticides, and yeah,
What do you think is the number one thing that governments can do in terms of, making a difference?
Well, like I said before, I don't think they're going to make a difference as fast because it's an industry in the USA. But I feel once, maybe in the next 5 years, hopefully they'll ban neonicotinoids, and that'll really help bees in general. So yeah.
That's great, and I think probably people can pressure the government,
yeah, because
letter writing and stuff, right?
Everyone's like protesting, and maybe that could become something one day.
Save the bees.
Save the bees.
I also wondered what was, you learned so much through this process. What was the most exciting or interesting thing that you learned? What was just like that? Wow.
For me, I probably would say that pollination is blending. I never really knew that. I thought that they were always just going to flowers and pollinate them and transfer that over. Never really realized that it was inadvertently, and yeah, I thought that was really cool. And also, it was really fun installing the new colony at IPS. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
We're going to move to questions that have come to us on the YouTube channel. So Scott.
Great, here's from Dr. Ted Spear. Wow, that was great. Your photos are remarkable, and the tie is a nice touch. I'm particularly impressed by your field notes. Question: if humans will go extinct in 4 to 6 years after the extinction of bees, then I guess we better make sure the bees don't go extinct. The odds don't look good though, with Varroa Mites, Neonicotinoids, etc. While you offer some good suggestions for improving things, I would like to know if you are optimistic or pessimistic about chances of keeping the bees alive and healthy.
What does optimistic mean?
You're thinking there's a good chance that the bees will.
I have hope.
You are optimistic.
With Pam, I have hope. I think that we can really start saving these keystone figures. So yeah.
This is from 8th grade Ethan Ray. I was just wondering why the queen bee has a green dot on its back and why it is so much bigger than the others.
So she has a green dot so beekeepers can see which one it is, because normally after a year or so, beekeepers will kill the queen bee and replace her with another one because they don't. So when a queen bee ages, her egg laying ability slows down, and beekeepers want a fast queen laying a lot of eggs, so they'll usually kill them after a year, and so that they can see which one's the queen. I'm not 100% sure why it's bigger.
Okay, thank you. So as you know, the sixth grades in the think tank, we've got a variety of questions coming here. Question from Olivia: how long do bees live? Like, let's just say the queen bee as an example.
She lives for 2 to 3 years.
Okay, thank you. And here a question from Ethan Harrison: would you like to turn your love of bees into a future career?
Well, after doing this presentation, I'm thinking more and more about bees, so yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Scott, I'm going to do the last question now, just because we're running out of time. Do you have one more there?
I have one from Adrian.
Okay, go.
From Adrian: do you think humanity could survive a world without bees?
No.
No.